I think something a lot of guys wonder about, even if they've never been close to prison, is how they'd survive if they ever were. What would you say are the qualities necessary to get you through intact?
The instinct of survival should come to the front, but a lot of people, they've never been in that environment before, and they've never been anything even remotely close to this environment. It's prison is, when you walk through the doors of prison, you're literally taking a step thousands of years back in time, back to our like most primordial origins. Complete savagery is sort of like the rule in prison. There's no things like politeness, things that might have been raised with or taught to sort of like organize your life around in society. That stuff gets left at the door. There's no such thing as, oh, I'm walking through a door, someone's behind me, I'm going to hold the door for that person. They're not going to see that as something gracious. They're going to see it as weakness. There's only strength and weakness. Why is he holding the door for me? He must be a sucker. He must be afraid of me. And you're opening yourself up as a target to that person. So for me, I was raised right. You hold the door for somebody. You say please. You say thank you. In prison, you're a sucker if you do any of that. So all the please and thank you gets left at the door. Don't hold the door for somebody. They're going to think you're a sucker. They're going to try you then later on. So it's sort of like against my own nature to not hold the door, but I would have to learn, let it slam in the guy's face, and then he'll respect me. It's unfortunate that it's like that, but there's also different prisons, and that should be understood. There's low security, there's camps, there's medium security. It's not as bad there. When you go to the maximum security, the penitentiary, like for example, Lewisburg Penitentiary, where I was housed, that's a madhouse. Everybody's serving life. They're all murderers. That's where you're just surrounded by predators. When I landed in Lewisburg Penitentiary, first of all, day one, there was a double homicide. The Aryan Brotherhood hacked to death and gutted 2 black Muslims. And basically it was a follow-up of a retaliatory strike having to do with an ongoing race war. So that's like, welcome to the penitentiary. But when you get there, I started to reach out to, I was met rather by guys who looked out for me. They knew I was coming, and they reached out for me. Hey, Lou, we heard you landed in the pen. Jimmy Coonan, the boss of the Westies, was there. A couple of guys from the Gambino family who I knew, who I hadn't seen in years. So they said to me, Lou, how long are you doing? I said, I got hit with 13 years. They were all doing life, by the way. And they said, don't tell anybody that. I said, don't tell anybody I'm doing 13 years. They said, that's a skid bid to these guys. That's nothing. They'll be so jealous, they'll kill you because you're doing 13 years. These guys got double or triple that in already, some of them. So don't tell anybody. So I learned in the pen, the best way to survive in the pen was also to keep your mouth shut. Don't telegraph your thoughts, because people are constantly preying on you. They're constantly looking for a sign of weakness. If a guy says, oh, gee, I got to call my wife today when I get my phone call privilege, somebody hears that and says, oh, he's got a wife. Does he have kids? Does he care about life? Does he care about living? Because that's a weakness too. If you care about living, because you have to be ready on the drop of a dime if somebody messes with you in the pen. And I'm keeping vulgar language out of this, but it's F with you in the pen. You have to be prepared on the drop of a dime to say, I don't give a F about my life. Let's do this. Let's do this right now. And that's the only thing that will keep predators away from you, because they're looking for a target. They're looking for a victim. And if it's not you, they'll move on to somebody else. So the best way to survive in an environment like that is to make sure that you're quiet about your own thoughts and your personal life. You don't let anybody know about it. And you can't tell somebody you're doing 13 years. I was doing 13. That's nothing to these guys. I didn't want to tell them that. And basically, the other thing too is, in all prisons, if somebody steps to you and it's a constant, everyone's constantly trying you. So if somebody steps to you, get right in their face, and 9 out of 10 times that will diffuse the situation. Every bully is a coward, whether it's in prison or whether it's on the street. Every bully is a coward. It's as sure as the laws of physics. Every bully is a coward. So if somebody steps to me in prison, I'm 5'5". Somebody steps to me in prison and he's 6'5". I know I got him beat already, because he must be a bully, which means he's a coward. Because if you got to come to me a foot under you, then you're a coward and a bully. So I would just like tell the guy, listen, I'll cut your effing nuts off. Again, I wouldn't use that language. It would be more vulgar, but I would definitely get in the guy's face, let him know what's going on. And he would step down and say, oh, I didn't mean you. And for example, let me give you an example. You walk into like, let's say a recreation room. Somebody go, yo, get over here. Who the fuck are you talking to? Oh, I didn't mean you. I meant the guy behind you. They meant me. But when I responded like that, it immediately diffused the situation. Then you get even in like medium security prisons, you get people who try you too. For example, I was in a medium security when I got knocked down from the pen. My security level dropped finally. I went to a medium security. I'm in my cell. I'm filling out my commissary. And some guy walks in. He goes, yo, I got no commissary. He goes, my commissary privileges were taken away from me. I got nothing. Can you please buy me an ice cream cone? I said, sure, you got it. Ice cream cone was like $1 or $2. Then they had a quart of ice cream, which was like $4 or $5. So I go, yeah, you got it. I'll mark it down for you. Come see me when I get my commissary. He goes, you know what? Get me a quart right away. I said, you know what? You ain't getting the quart now or the cone. Step out of my cell or we're throwing. And that was it. He left. That's it. He ruined his chances for the cone because he tried for the quart. A quart or a cone didn't mean nothing to me. I would have bought him 10 quarts. I didn't care about that. But I know what it is. He's trying to push up on me and trying to see if I got weakness. And that's what that's about. And if you say, yeah, I'll get you the quart. Next thing it's, you know what? Get me $20 worth of commissary. Get me $40 worth of commissary. Let me have your whole commissary. And when you're done, turn around, pull your pants down. That's what it's about. That's what jail is. So you stop it right at the beginning and always do a preemptive strike because it's worth it. And if you got to fight, even if it's a knife fight, it's worth it because if anybody sees your weakness, it's never going to end.
Let me ask you just what I'm going to play off that. I think that's fantastic. But let me ask you this. How do you then survive emotionally? How do you keep your humanity intact in an environment like that?
Most people don't keep their humanity intact because it's a situation you become institutionalized and eventually you become the environment. You know the old saying, you could take Tarzan out of the jungle. You can't take the jungle out of Tarzan. Eventually, you're going to become Tarzan. You're going to become part of that jungle. What saved me 1,000,000% is books. My constant reading. I read 18 hours a day, and I wish others did too. And I always try to promote reading in jail. If somebody was Asian American, I tried to give them a book on Asian history. Whether I don't even care if it was Mao Zedong or Zhou Enlai or Chiang Kai-shek or if it was African American. I give a book on Martin Luther King, on Nelson Mandela's Long Walk to Freedom. I always try to promote reading, and I would try to appeal maybe to what somebody might like, consistent with their origins. But for me, I was reading about the whole world. I didn't just hone in on Italian history or Italian American or American history. I wanted to know about the entire world and constantly reading about history, about physics, about science, about religion, about the ancient Greeks and what they taught us, philosophy, all the way up and through the Enlightenment period and so on. That kept me sort of in touch with, there's something bigger than this jungle that I'm in. There's something much bigger outside these walls. And I understood the world better from inside those walls than I had ever understood it before when I was outside, part of the world. So that for me was what kept my humanity and kept me always knowing that there was something bigger than this. This wasn't the end all world. And people get, just as in life, people get caught up in the world they're in. Somebody's got 5 kids, they got to drag them to school, then soccer practice, and then they encounter other people in their lives. And I don't have time for that. I don't have time for this because they're so engrossed in their own. And it's sad because it's the way it has to be if you're going to raise 5 kids. But by the same token, if you're in jail, you're sort of engrossed in that sort of narrow world. And raising 5 kids, by the way, is engrossed in a good world. You're contributing to humanity and civilization, and you're carrying on, a procreativity, etc. But the jungle of prison, when you're engrossed in that world, there's really nothing positive about it. So you need to stay anchored in the outside world and realize that, and realize that there's something bigger out there. But then again, there are people who are serving life in there, and they're right next to you. What do they care about the outside world? This narrow existence is all they're going to have for the rest of their lives. I'll give you an example. I was in the penitentiary with a guy, and he kept getting caught on disciplinaries. Once in a while, heroin would come in on a visit, and he'd shoot a little heroin. Other than that, he wasn't a heroin addict. He'd be fine. But when he'd shoot up, he'd get all frigged up, and he'd end up in the hole. So one day I said to him, I said, hey, Joe, what's up with that? And he said, Lou, I'm doing life. I'm never leaving here. How can I argue with him? I'm not promoting heroin use. I didn't want him to do heroin, but how do you begin to argue with the guy? He's never leaving his cell. So that's a different existence than even I understood. So that's a different side of prison that, again, lifers understand that. They're never leaving that narrow hell. But if you are leaving, the way to preserve your humanity and come out at least the same or better is to stay in touch, I think, with the world outside. And some people don't have visits. Some people don't have families. Some people burned all their bridges. It doesn't mean it's over. There's always books. Read books, better your life, instill a certain code of morals in your life. And I think that also, too, contributes to your return to society. And then eventually you'll build new bridges, or you'll rebuild the old ones that you burnt. And I did help a lot of people with that, by the way. I became like the Sigmund Freud of prison. My cell was always open, and my bunk was like the bed in Sigmund Freud's house, where convicts would come and say, yo, Lou, I got to talk about something, my girl or my wife or my kids or my lawyer. And I'd say, have a seat, lay down if you want. And I took it as, for me, it was like, because I loved psychology, I was able to get it into these guys' brains and not only help them, but learn and understand so much about humanity and so much about the human condition and so much about our psyche that I would have never understood before. I had this whole canvas of the world's rejects, which is what we are, myself included, when we're in there, we're the world's rejects. I had the whole canvas of the world's rejects right in front of me, visiting my cell on a daily basis. Sigmund Freud would have killed for this opportunity, and I had it. And I was able to help a lot of guys. A lot of times I put a marriage back together. I put a relationship back together, whether it be with a girl, a wife, or a kid. I might have gave good advice, sound advice with an attorney, how to proceed with their case. I reversed one of my cases pro se from prison, and I was able to help a lot of other people with understanding the law and getting out sooner. So that was helpful. But I think that's the way to answer your question once again, to preserve humanity. I think is to stay in touch with the world. And the only way to do that and to understand there's something bigger outside those steel walls and those brick and high towers, gun towers, is to always stay in touch with books. And there are libraries, although most of them antiquated in prison, and we need new books and new libraries in the American prison system. They don't promote reading enough, but there still are prison libraries. Get in there. I would get in there and wipe them out. And I advise any inmate to do the same.
Great, Lou. Thank you.
Cool. Awesome.